Dave Zackin is a New York City-based painter, sculptor, cartoonist, and animator. I fell in love with the line of strange and wonderful ceramic pots he sells on his Instagram page and really wanted to talk to him about how that came about and his other artwork. We talked about the difference between cartoon drawing and real-life drawing, mural painting, and fitting art in where you can.
You don't know what to do, and you don't know what to say. Forget all that. Start anyway. Spark that fire and build it high, and watch it burn. Then let it die.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. How are you doing?
Oh, pretty well.
Nice to meet you. Thanks for doing this.
Oh, yeah, sure. Anytime.
So, I really want to talk about all the different ways that you make art today, but obviously what drew me to your work was your Instagram account where you paint ceramics that were left over from other people at the pottery studio and paint them up and sell them. And so I'm really wondering, like, how'd you get the idea to do that? Were they just laying around and were you like, I'm going to try that?
Yeah, it's a pretty good scam. So, like in New York, a lot of the ceramics people will go to community studios rather than have their own studio, just because nobody has the space in their apartment for a full kiln. So it's a
Yeah.
lot of sort of more collective work in New York than a lot of other places. And the
Yeah.
studio I used to be at, they had like a firing fee system where it's basically, in ceramics you cook things once to get the clay hard, and then you cook it a second time to put the glaze on it. That's like the glass coat. And
Right.
so this place, after people had cooked things, or at this place, they had you pay one time, and that covered both of the kiln firings. And so there were a
Ah.
lot of pieces that people had cooked one time and then abandoned. So in the backyard of the studio was a little crummy postage stamp backyard, and it was filled with piles and piles of pots that had been abandoned. And like I realized, I was like, wait, so somebody already paid for all of these. So no matter what I do to them, I don't have to pay any money to get them run through. And so, I could, just if I was going to a friend's house the next day for a birthday party, I could write happy birthday in big letters on them, and it would be like, oh, it's
Right.
free, a bunch of dishes. And then so I started painting a lot of cartoons on those. And then I'm also a
Yeah.
sculptor, and I really love to sculpt on things. And I take all of the unwanted pots at the studio, where I'll have signs up at the studio I'm at now where I'll say, don't feel like rewedging your clay, put it on my shelf. And I'm kind of friends with
Mm.
everybody, and there's a very good pizzeria across the street, so I'll trade people pizza slices, and I'll say like, oh, if you're throwing that demo pot, for your students, I'm friends with all the teachers too, and you don't want it, I'll buy you 2 slices of pizza if you let me have it. And so I have a lot of sort of deals going with friends and trades, and like I've made vases for friends' weddings and things. So I don't know. It's kind of a community. I'm friends with everybody, so people leave a lot of
Yeah.
things on my shelf, and that means every
Sweet.
time I walk into the studio, there's something new to work on. That's a kind of not a blank canvas. It's a surprise shape that I can work from.
Yeah. Well, yeah, which makes everything that you make is so unique and interesting. It's doubly unique because, yeah, they're all kind of off a little in their shape.
Yeah, right, right. Yeah, my
Uh,
favorite are like they'll teach classes for elementary school kids, and sometimes it'll be like a 9-year-old trying the wheel for the first time and making the lumpiest, craziest pot in the world, and those ones are really fun to sort of carve on top of because they've got thick parts and thin parts, and like they've got really like surfaces to play against, or different weight to them than anything any adult would make.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And you're keeping things out of the trash, which is always cool. I love people that work with, like, reclaimed materials.
Yeah, right, right. I used to work for the New York City Department of Sanitation for a while, and so I've always been interested in trash. Like before I got into ceramics, I was finding things on the sidewalk and painting on them. So it's
Yeah,
all
yeah, yeah.
connected.
For sure, yeah. I saw on your website, I was looking at the pictures of the mural that you created for Long Journey in San Francisco earlier this
Oh
year.
yeah, right.
And I was really kind of paying attention to the style, like the kind of humanesque creatures that you have going on there. And these kind of like creature faces and forms, they seem to be throughout a lot of what you do. Have these guys been kind of with you for a long time?
Yeah, it's basically I feel like there's a divide between, the artists I know, those who draw from life can kind of like look at life and draw anything. And then like the cartoony folks like me are sort of more like, oh, I figured out one type of nose and 6 type of eyes. Let me see what permutations I can get out of that. And so a lot of the time and I always, when I get into the studio with all of my friends, we're always talking about like whether we want to try and break new ground or do the thing we always do. And we're always like, I think I'll do the thing I always do today. And it's kind of like, in each piece, I try and be inventive in some categories and do the thing I enjoy in some categories, so that something new is coming out, but I'm also doing the like obsessive thing that satisfies me, which is, sometimes creating like eyes with dark circles under them so that cartoony characters look a little bit nervous and a little deflated, things like that.
Yeah, I love them. They're so cool. And it seems to be really popular. Why do you think these designs on the pottery specifically is like it seems to be flying off your shelves, it's hard to get these pieces, it seems. Why do you think they're, like, resonating so much with people right now?
I mean, I think it's a sort of good trick of the social media world too, that it's like it's kind of a couple niche interests combined, sort of like you can imagine it like a New Yorker gag comic, or maybe not New Yorker standards, but like a silly old like one panel comic combined with pottery, and so that's like two different image interest groups that kind of come together on a thing. And I don't think like
Right.
too many other people are doing comedy ceramics, so like I've got that niche, and then I
Yeah.
think it's like on the internet, it means like something somebody could share with their aunt or something like that. So word gets out. And then the other
Yeah.
thing is I'm super prolific, so I have at least, one new thing every day. And so I think that sort of helps that it's just like I'm flooding the world with dishes. So
Yeah.
I guess that's why it's popular. And then I think, those are the ways it's popular sort of algorithmically, but I'm hoping, the things are popular also because they resonate. Like I think I try and sort of clear my head and get to the space of like an outsider looking on the world, or yeah, somebody looking on the world from the outside. And so like, strange observations, stuff like that.
Yeah.
What's the deal with airline peanuts type of stuff, but
Yeah,
or
yeah.
maybe more refined version.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I was getting that, some of the things that you write on those pots, I was like, he's nailing it." Like, it's more it's like an observation of the world in a funny way. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I was trying to think like like 2 minutes before this recording started. I was like, oh, I should like think of some of the things I've written on pots that are funny when you say them out loud. But it's kind of I don't know. I think part of it is like the form and the function are tied together. So it's like if you read these little notes, not when they're not written in funny handwriting in a particular way and with the composition, then they're not as good. But it's I think the whole is greater
100%.
than the sum of its parts, basically.
Yeah, totally. I was actually doing the same thing because I was making some notes earlier and I was writing down some of the things that were written on the pots, but I really was like, it doesn't really make sense until you're actually looking at at the pot itself.
Yeah.
Like people, you really, yeah. For anyone listening, you just got to check it out because they're very cool.
Thanks.
I also loved the photos of the 350 square foot apartment that you and your partner lived in for 7 years in New York City.
Oh, yeah, right. I mean, she was in med school for part of that, so she was away
Right.
for a little while of it, but, yeah, we squeezed in. And the problem is, like, I collect a lot of things, from the sidewalk, and then my wife likes to keep the things, and so it's a deadly combination where I'm sort of catch and release, like, "Look at all this cool stuff I found. Who can we give it away to?" And then my wife is like,
Right.
either like, "I don't want that at all," or, like, if it's sits in the house for more than, like, 3 weeks, then it's like, "Well, it's part of the house now." And so it's a problem where we have a lot of stuff, but, yeah, when we had the small studio, though, it was, this is, in a cool neighborhood in a cool spot, but very small space. So we're both short and we built a loft bed and we could both like fit under the bed. So
Yeah.
we were able to squeeze it in.
Yeah, well, it was clearly you made the most of that space, and I saw the 2 different kind of workstations in there. Like, what kind of things did you create in there? Were you doing some sculpture
It
and
was I think before I found ceramics, like I've always done, some graphic design and work art stuff. And then I was an animator for a long time and I made a film that did really well at film festivals and I kind of lived off that for a couple of years. But I think when I was in that apartment, that would be about, I don't know, 10 years ago. And I lived there for maybe 7 years. So if anybody can do math, they can figure it all out. But I would do a lot of like elaborate, crazy birthday presents for friends. Like before I found ceramics, I was still working on things all the time, but it would be like a little bit more diverse and a little bit more like art tailored for somebody very in particular. It would be like, oh, it's my cousin's birthday. I'm going to find an old cigar box and I'm going to do paintings all over it. And then I'm going to find little objects that fit in the box and I'll do paintings on those. And, a lot of
Yeah,
things like that. So
yeah.
that was really fun to do.
It just goes to show that artists will, find a way to do what they need to do wherever they are, right? Like, you don't need a big fancy studio to get things done.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'm starting to dream of a big fancy studio, but it's also
Oh,
there's a
yeah.
lot of work I can do from home in my apartment that I have a child-sized desk in the living room that's really pretty small and really pretty covered with things. So I often work on the floor next to that desk. But that
Mm,
working on that means that I can hang around the house while my son, who's almost 9, we can hang around together and like I can work on art. Whereas if I had a big fancy studio, I'd have to like schlep him on the subway to wherever my big fancy studio was. And the other thing is like New York rent. I can't get a big fancy studio, but I really like the
yeah.
community studio where I do a lot of the clay. So my trick is like all of the sculptural stuff I'll do at the clay studio, and then I'll take home a lot of the pots that have been cooked one time, the bisque pots, and then I can get those back to my apartment on my bicycle, Or usually
Mhm.
I'll take a cab with like 20 of those at the end of the semester when I grab all the student work, and then I'll paint them, one or two a night, with this underglaze, which is basically like it's basically clay and pigment. It's almost like a tempera paint that you can paint on clay, and it'll bake onto it, but it doesn't have the silica that does the glass coating. So I'll paint on
Mhm.
it with the underglaze, and then I'll bike it over to the studio, and then I'll dip it in the clear glaze, and then it gets the glassy covering.
Okay, yeah, cool. Here on the East Coast of Canada, we pride ourselves on having a large percentage of artists per capita and really strong supportive communities where artists can access mentorship and find their champions, as they're getting started. I'm assuming there's a lot of that going on in New York City as well. Did you have some mentors early on that helped you kind of find what you wanted to do in the art world?
Yeah, I would say it was just more, best friends who were it was more peer group than mentors. But I don't know. When I went to school at RISD, which is a famous US art school, but I studied animation there, and I had a couple of best friends who I was in studio with all night every night, and we really didn't sleep much, and we would just bounce ideas off each other. And my friend Matt now, writes children's books, makes websites, does a million crazy things. And my friend Edie, he's like a fine artist who's now living in Vancouver, but he does like really cool, wild like art using a lot of geometry that I don't know. You'll have to look up, but if you look up Edie
Cool.
Fake or Matt Lamotte, those are my two best buddies who like I still sort of I'm like, oh, what would Matt think of this? What would Edie think of this? And I think then I have like hundreds of other friends who are artists who I look to and I look at their work and check out what they're up to.
Yeah. Why did you kind of get away from animation?
Oh, it's just a huge hassle. I don't know. We don't have a national film board in the US, and so like you have to,
Mm,
you got to pay the rent. But I made this one film, yeah, that did well at film festivals. I talked about this on another podcast once, but I had a big scam where when I made the film in the year, it was my senior thesis from art school, but I made it in the year 2002, and in 2002, YouTube hadn't come out yet. It was a year away, but it was I think Kodak knew that everybody's switching from film to digital. So if you won a prize at any film festival, they'd give you between 500 and 2,000 bucks worth of free film. So I would
yeah.
just like, get prizes at all these film festivals, get free film, sell it to people I knew, and that's how I paid the rent. And so that was really fun. But then it was like, when I was out in the world, I was, I had shot that film on film, but I was like, I no longer had an Oxbury machine, or
Mm,
Steenbeck or any of this film editing stuff. And I could have worked on video. But I think what I liked about animation was sort of the magic of like, you start with drawings and it becomes something else. And I feel
yeah.
like I kind of found that magic trick with clay too, that it's like you start with a lump of clay and it becomes something else. And then I really like the cooking process and the film developing process that you send it away for a couple of days and then it comes back because it
Mm,
means like there's a point at which you stop tinkering and you're like, all right, I'm putting it in the kiln. All right, I've shot this film. I'm
right.
sending it off to be developed. And then you get something back that's not quite what you expected. And I like that a little. It takes a little
Mm.
responsibility away from me. Whereas on a painting, it's just like the way it looks is all my fault. Whereas with clay, it's sort of like, oh, somebody was cooking something with a really coppery vase next to it in the kiln, and the copper had some oxidize, some sort of effect on it, and it's you can
Right.
kind of blame the ghost in the machine a little bit more for how things come out.
Right. But also, I mean, do they ever come out, different than you imagined, but it's really cool? Like,
Yeah, sometimes I do. Yeah, right. And my big trick is like, perfection on the next one. I just try and make a lot of things so that like if something disappoints me, I've got something else coming out of the kiln soon after. But
yeah.
sometimes they do come out better than expected. I think when they come out better than expected, I don't really notice it as much as when they come out worse than expected. And when they come out worse than expected, I still sort of like I know a lot of potters who like have second sales and sell the bad ones, like or give away the bad
Right.
ones or throw them away or smash them. But I sort of love all my children, and I'm like, "Oh, my ugly children, I love you just as much as my beautiful children." And then I have to figure out, how to like the rest of the world doesn't always love the ugly ones, but if I sell them cheap enough, somebody will take it and they'll be happy to
Yeah,
have it. So I like that.
totally. Yeah. I saw
Mm.
some guitars in those pictures of your old apartment. Are you a musician as well?
Oh no, my wife was in a band for a while though, so those were
Uh,
probably hers.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I never really, I don't know. I listen to music. I never played it. I just focused on the fine art stuff.
Yeah, and I know you went to school for fine art. Did you always wanna be an artist when you grew up?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I was always also like sort of worried about how to like how to survive. And so I always wanted to be an artist, but I also like, I think some of the people who are the most artists are either super wealthy or live in a country with a better social safety net and like can pull it off. So I was always trying to balance like, okay, how can I Like, I want to live in a city. How can I afford to live in a city and be an
Mhm.
artist? So I've always been an artist, and then I've never worked anywhere for profit. I've always worked for the city or worked for non for profits, but
Right.
tried to balance a life of doing one thing plus doing another thing.
Yeah, yeah. Was it school that brought you to New York City in the first place?
No, I just always wanted to live in New York. My aunt Susan lives on Flatbush Ave, which is kind of near where I live. So I visit her a lot as a kid. And, I grew up right next to Boston. And so growing up, I thought
Cool.
Boston was really the center of the earth. Like I saw those t shirts for Hard Rock Cafe that said, like, Boston, New York, London, Tokyo, Hard Rock Cafe. And I was
Mhm.
like, yeah, those are the four cities in the world. And
Yeah.
now I realize Boston is like a little more provincial, but, it's still nice.
Yeah.
But I've been in New York, yeah, I think since 2003. So 23 years now.
Yeah, cool. And, is it hard to keep going at it?
No, I think it's pretty easy to keep going at it. I mean, sometimes I'll have like some, form of writer's block, or I'll have like fallow periods where I'm not making anything for a while. But I
Yeah.
feel like it's easiest thing in the world to at least like I can make a goofy old man face is sort of my default. Or like if I'm staring at a pot and I'm trying to figure out what to paint, and I'm like, oh, how about I'll paint my foot? And then I'm like, oh, I've done that 8,000 times. How many things can I write about my foot that like, oh, my foot's in a bowl? But
Yeah.
so there are like a lot of cliches, and it's hard to get something new some nights. But I feel like
Yeah.
if I've got, a lot of the time just as my regular practice, I'll go into the studio and somebody's left me a vase and I'll stick a big nose on it and make a face out of it. And then I'll add some arms to it. And I mean, it's
Mhm.
doing the same thing over and over again, but it's getting slightly different results every time. And so
Yeah.
that's like, sometimes I feel like that's almost like the lowest common denominator of like make an interesting face on a pot somebody gave me. And I can do that in my sleep, but it's also the thing that I'm most drawn to do. It's the thing that's most satisfying. So
Mhm.
yeah, that's the struggle, whether
Cool.
it's like, is that a victory or a failure if I'm doing something similar to what I've done before, but it's the thing that brings me joy. And so I usually do that, as a warm up, and then maybe I'll make something different also in the day. But I really like the old man faces on pots. That's like my favorite thing to make. So I make a lot of them.
Yeah, they're awesome.
Oh, thanks.
Tell me about your, book of games.
Oh yeah, that one I just made. That was time when I was living in that tiny apartment, and my wife was in med school in Philadelphia, and I was working at Bellevue Hospital, which is a famous hospital in New York. It's a big level 1 trauma center, and it's a big psychiatric institution, and it's a public hospital. So we treat everybody regardless of their income or ability to pay or immigration status. So it's a
Mhm.
nice thing about like New York that we have a robust public hospital system. Even
Yeah.
in America, the healthcare system is terrible, but
Mhm.
we do have there are a lot of public options that are kind of like not national systems, but hidden around so that people can get healthcare when they need it. But anyway, I was working there, and that was an institution that I loved, but it was a terrible job. It was just kind of, my coworkers were mean, and it was like not that satisfying a job, but I did get to see newborn babies in the hallway all the time. So I was trying to think of just, how I could be an artist, what I could do to like, get the world to see something that I was doing other than the graphic design at the hospital. And so I
Mhm.
came up with that book of games because I always like to sort of gamify and play little games. Now that my son's 9 years old, like every day on the walk to school, we'll play some weird word game or something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Cool.
yeah, I never went anywhere with that, but it was kind of fun to figure out how to mix, text and imagery to make those pages work.
Yeah. I get the impression from you that there's a sort of alien or alternate universe inside you that you're attempting to describe to this world, which could be said for any artist, I suppose. Do you feel like you're trying to get something out, you know, into the world that's different?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think that goes for any artist and probably any person too. That it's like we're each, these separate little islands that are trying to connect, and so like I think that's what it is. Like if I'll have some strange thought, and I'll be like, oh, I wonder if the rest of the world might feel this way, or somebody might. And so I think that's always
Mm.
the fun of it to see, like, let my mind wander to a strange place and see if I can get anybody else to meet me in that strange place. I think is kind of one of the fun games when I'm doing the more word based art.
Yeah. Well, definitely I like your world. It's weird. Whenever I discovered it, like there was a couple of my friends here also on the island that also loved it. They're like, check this guy out. It's so weird and awesome. And we're like, he's one of us. He's another weirdo.
Oh, that's
Like
cool.
it's fun to find that, in different pockets around the world.
Mm. I'll tell my friend Jeff, he's from Prince Edward Island. He's at the ceramic studio too, so maybe he knows
Oh, no
some
way.
artists over
Oh my
there. Yeah,
gosh.
right, right.
PEI is small. I might know him.
Right, right.
How can people support you as an artist? I mean, obviously they can buy your pots, but do you actually ship to Canada?
Yeah, I ship everywhere. No, I do a lot of international shipping. Like shipping has gotten, I mean, aside from like these Trump tariffs are terrible and confusing, but it's like now I just use like an online shipping thing that uses the US Postal Service, but it's sort of like you type it into this alternate website and they get you a discount and they'll sort of handle international shipping and customs forms. So I end up
Gotcha.
shipping to a lot of people all over the world. They're like, Singapore, Malta, Australia. I feel like I've shipped pots to probably, I don't know, 60 different countries, and it's usually not a problem. I just charge whatever the US Postal Service charges me for shipping. So Canada is actually often the same price as France. It's sort of like, I think,
Yeah.
like there's some trade war stuff going on, but it'll be maybe like, for a cereal bowl or something, it'll be around $20 extra for shipping. Like I'll usually do free shipping for anybody in the US, and then I'll charge whatever it costs for international.
Yeah.
But
Gotcha.
yeah, if anybody wants, yeah, my name is Dave Zackin, so that's what I am on Instagram, and that's what my website is. But yeah, I think I don't know, yeah, just I would say everybody just if you're up for it, look up what I do. That would be the most gratifying for me because it's mostly I make the art to like show off to the world. It's like one person gets to own each dish, but I like to show it off to everybody.
Yeah, yeah,
And then
yeah.
I make like a zine each year that I charge $6 for, just to have like something cheap that people can buy if they don't want to spend $100 on a teacup.
Mhm. Is there any art form that you haven't tried that yet that you really want to? Like, you've done a lot of different types, but
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Yeah, so I did animation. I've done a lot of sculpture of various forms, and I did some kinetic stuff in college. One of the most fun courses I took was this little 6-week winter session course where we did working art, where it was all art with pulleys and cranks and things. So I made like this giant wind up guy who opens his jaw like a hinge and flosses his teeth in this really wild manner when you turn the crank, and that was really fun. But I think when I become old, I'd like to do some stone carving. I've always thought of
Mm.
doing it now, but like I can't do it inside the apartment. It's too messy.
Yeah.
So, like, I've thought of doing it on the sidewalk in front of my apartment, but I live on, like, a heavily touristed street in Brooklyn, and it would kind of be like a big, it would be sort of a sideshow if I did it. So, like,
Right.
if at some point, like, I built up the chutzpah, maybe I would do it. But I think
Mhm.
stone carving would be kind of fun. And then my wife goes to the jewelry district in Manhattan all the time and gets little metal things that she makes, or little things she makes out of wax cast and metal. And it is cool to like live in a city with a thriving jewelry district where you can get stuff cast. But I
Right.
usually don't work that small, and if you work large, casting things in metal is very expensive. So at
Right.
some point, I wanna make some tiny things that'll get cast.
Cool.
But, yeah, and I've been making, like, some enamel pins, just sending them out to a company that manufactures them, but it's kinda fun to have pins to hand out when I run into friends on the street. I made one
Yeah.
that says, "I think we're going the wrong way," and it has the US facing in the wrong direction and a little goofy face on it, and that one was, like, a kinda fun one to hand out.
Yeah. That would be popular, I think, if you mass produce that one.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, I made like 1,000 of those, and it's kind of fun to hand them out. I haven't gone like, more than 1,000 of anything, but it's fun to have like little tchotchkes.
Yeah, totally. Could you ever see yourself not doing something artistic?
Yeah, I mean, I've had times where I haven't done artistic stuff. Like I like to always do something artistic, but it's sort of like I remember at the beginning of the pandemic, like my wife was working, she's a psychiatrist and she was working in the emergency department at Sinai Hospital, so she had to be in the hospital every day. And our son was 2.5, so I was taking care of our son by day, and then at night I still had my day job, and so I was working my day job at night, and so I wasn't really sleeping, and that's when I
Yeah.
developed psoriatic arthritis, and I had like rashes all over my body and it hurt to walk. And
Oof.
so I didn't get any art done for, probably when the pandemic hit in March of 2020. So it was probably, March, April, May, June, July. I sort of didn't do any art. And then finally one night a friend of mine was making was publishing a book about like people's sexy stories about sex and people's non-sexy stories about sex. And she was like, "Oh yeah, it's going to print really soon. Like the designer has a couple little spots. If you want to do a spot illustration." I was like, "Sure." So I just stayed up all night and did a nice little painting. And then I was like, "Oh yeah, I do like making art." And I think since that moment I haven't taken a break, but I've had other periods in my life where I've taken breaks from art. And
Yeah.
getting back into it is always satisfying. And if I do take a break, I find when I get back into making art, I make stuff I'm happier with. So like,
Mm.
yeah, I
Mhm.
sort of like I have a lot of friends who are artists who haven't made any art for a while, and I think that's totally normal. And I think you can have times in your life where you're, not productive. Uh,
Yeah, I think so too. I've also heard from a lot of artists that say that, when they're not doing it for a while, they can really tell, like, they're, you know,
mhm.
through their physical health or their mental health or, just through how they're living their lives that something is not quite, um, like, quite right. Although it's
Yeah.
inevitable. Life does catch
And
up
I
to
think
you.
and I think also like joggers would say that about jogging, and it's like I've done jogging only for a couple months in my life, and it's like I probably would feel like a lot better physically if I jogged all the time. But it's like you only have so much time in life to do certain things, to figure out what you can do. And art's kind of what I've chosen to spend my time on, but I could see, doing other stuff some of the time.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. Yep.
I don't know. Yeah, I think for me, I guess the art thing is just trying to sort of it's almost like sending little postcards out into the world, and it's like I like to and I've got sort of a compulsive nature about I always wanna be working on something, so, like, growing up, it was decorating my home, like, even before I was in that 300 square foot apartment, I had a big bedroom growing up outside of Boston, that was the attic space, so I just
Mhm.
covered every inch of it with different posters and collages and different things a lot of things hanging from the ceiling. It was sort of a fire death trap, but, never caught on fire, we did okay. But, so that was the big project, and then, like, after that, animation was the big project, and after that was sort of like, you know, I think just like moving to New York and figuring out my life was the big project, and now ceramics has become the
Mhm.
big project, and it's been the big project for about a decade. But I wonder, I think I'll stick with ceramics for life, but I don't know, who knows what comes next. But ceramics
Yeah.
has been really fun. Doing that mural recently was also really cool. I'd like to do some more murals. That one was I sort of improvised the whole thing, and it was across. I don't know how you calculate, but I'll say like 4 rooms, like a big room, an alcove, a closet, and a little hallway, another room, and it was that was really fun to just work 12-hour days every day and hire random people as assistants and be like, "Right, we gotta paint this wall yellow, and then we gotta put a big hairy arm on the wall, and, the big hairy arm should be holding something, but I don't know what yet, so we'll make the hand in sort of a shape where we can put something in it," and it was just, like, a great way to work to
Cool.
be, like have, 15 things that one needs to get done and be like, all right, I can't figure out this one. I'll figure out this one. And that one
Yeah.
actually, before I did that mural too, it was basically this woman I'm friends with who's like a big deal venture capitalist billionaire out in San Francisco who I met through the internet. She's been collecting my work for a while and she asked me to come out and paint a mural. But it was really like I hadn't painted too many murals before. I can paint on a wall, but I didn't have that much practice. And so it was fun
Mhm.
to figure out if I could do it while I was doing it, but it was also a
Yeah.
little high pressure. But I
Mhm.
really like that experience of you being, thrown into the deep end and figuring it out. And
Yeah.
the nicest part about that one was I went to an art supply store on the first day and I didn't know what I was doing. And I talked to the guy behind the counter who was this like, 20 something trans kid who I was just like, oh yeah, so, yeah, where do you keep the brushes? Cause I got hired by a zillionaire to paint a mural and I've never painted a mural before. And they were like, oh, wow, that's cool. I painted some murals. Here are the brushes. And I was like, oh yeah, where'd you paint the mural? And he's like, oh, at the queer comic store down the street. And then at 3 in the morning when I woke up with jet lag, I was like, queer comic store, San Francisco, mural. And I found the person's name and I wrote them a message at 3 a.m. that they responded to the next morning. I was like, hey, will you assist me with this mural? And they were able to help out. And then their brother, who was in town from Albuquerque for a drag show, helped out for a day. And then a couple of, I don't know, my friends had friends of friends of friends who helped out. So it was cool to like grab
So
people and
cool.
make a project together.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I'm jealous of all the musicians who can like get a band together once in a while, and I'm never able to do that. So I like to, hang out with the community.
Totally. Yeah. Another guest that I've had on, Jordan Cameron, he's a local artist here, does a bit of everything, but he got into mural painting the same way. It would basically just by saying yes. Someone was like, "Can you do this?" He's like, "Yes," and he had never done it before. So,
Yeah.
yeah, he has similar story of, and this was an outside thing. So he was outside painting on the side of a building, and he said it was a pretty wild process to figure out how to do it while there were people walking by constantly. Like,
Right. Right. Yeah, and there are correct ways to do it and incorrect ways, and it's sometimes
yeah,
fun to find the sweet spot of, like, the slightly incorrect way that, like, allows you a little bit of freedom to be it's I almost like to give myself room to fail with that's the fun of, like, putting something into the kiln of, like, "Well, I don't know how it's gonna turn out, so I might as well try something crazy." Whereas if you know exactly how it's gonna turn out and you know the right way to do it, then, any problem you blame yourself for, but I like a little bit of, like, that first timer
yeah,
energy where it's this whole like parable about learning to, I don't know, row a kayak where it's like at first you don't know what you don't know, so it's all fun, and then it's like then suddenly you know how much you don't know, and you're like, oh, there's a lot I don't know, and then you sort of think
yep,
like, oh, I think I figured out everything, and then the next step is like you don't think about it at all, and you just do it and you just live it. So,
yeah, yep. That pretty
but
much sums it up
I
right
don't know.
there. The
Right?
artistic process.
Yeah, right, right. We figured it out. All right.
Yeah. All right. I don't have anything else to ask you. I'm just really glad that you were willing to do this, and it was great to talk to you, and I can't wait to see more of your weird pots on the internet. Maybe someday I'll
All
get
right.
one.
Well, yeah, yeah, sure. Yeah, and thanks so much. This was really fun to have the conversation.
Yeah. Take care. Have a great day.
You too. It's on.
It's nothing and everything. It's a gentle sigh and a scream into the void. It can leave you. It can be you if you let it. You don't know what to do and you don't know what to say. Forget all that. Start anyway. Spark that fire and build it high and watch it burn. Then let it die. It can make you cry. It can dry your eyes. It can be the one that keeps you warm inside, and it breaks your heart, then tells you where to start if you let it. You don't know what to do, and you don't know what to say. Forget all that. Start anyway. Spark that fire, then build it high. Watch it burn, and let it die. It can make you stand up, make you fly. It's a lifetime. In the blink of an eye, it's obsession and objection to the status quo. You got a lot to do, and you got a lot to say. Just write it out, get it on the page. Find your crew, get mobilized, and maybe soon you'll realize that it's nothing and everything. It's a gentle sigh and a scream into the void. It can leave you. It can be you if you let it.